Today we're unpacking one of the absolute most dramatic transitions of power in the ancient world, choosing the third caliph. It's this incredible story of sudden tragedy, intense ticking clock pressure, and honestly, a highly structured political process that was just incredibly rare for its time.
Think about it for a second. Who inherits the world's largest superpower when the leader suddenly falls? Historically speaking, power vacuums like that are almost always filled with civil war and bloodshed. But the second caliph, Umar, was absolutely determined to prevent that from happening.
So it all goes down in the mosque, where Omar was unexpectedly attacked by a man named Abu Lu'lu'a Firuz. As the crowd rushed to grab the attacker, Firuz actually turned his weapon on himself. And the aftermath of this was just swift and tragic. Omar was rushed home, and this desperate attempt to treat him, they gave him water mixed with dates and milk, but terribly the liquid just flowed right out of his wounds. Seeing this, his doctor had to deliver the crushing news. Survival was impossible. The leader of the Islamic Empire was dying.
You can imagine the panic setting in, right? His ministers, generals, and senior companions are all gathered around him. One guy steps forward and points out that, well, it was the custom of basically all great kings and emperors of the time to pass their throne down to their sons. So he suggests Umar do exactly that and appoint his son Abdullah. But Umar fiercely rejected the idea. He looked right at the man and delivered this forceful rebuke. "May Allah destroy you. I have never wished for the caliphate to remain in my family." He absolutely refused to let the caliphate turn into a dynastic rule like you'd see in the Roman or Persian empires.
So how do you solve a massive crisis of succession without creating a royal family? Well, Umar's solution actually hinged on one very specific number: 6. He nominated exactly 6 men to form an electoral council. The fate of the entire empire was going to rest entirely on their shoulders. What's really fascinating here is how methodically Omar eliminated his own bloodline from contention to ensure this process was completely fair. These nominees were drawn from a highly revered group known as the 10 Blessed Companions. But let's do the math real quick. Omar was one of them, and 2 had already passed away, so that leaves 7. Why only 6 nominees? Well, Omar deliberately excluded a man named Sa'id bin Zaid because Sa'id was his cousin and from his own tribe. Even though the guy was highly qualified, Omar wanted zero chance of the leadership staying under his family's control. He even put his son Abdullah in the room, but explicitly told him he was only there as an observer. He was strictly forbidden from actually becoming the caliph.
But just naming a committee, never enough. Omar really understood human nature. To prevent outside influence and chaos, he established these high-stakes, highly structured rules, basically creating one of the earliest enclosed electoral committees. He ordered that immediately after his burial, these 6 men were to be literally locked inside a house in Medina. They had a strict 3-day deadline to pick one of themselves as the next caliph. And talk about security, to make sure they weren't secretly lobbied by outside factions, he stationed 50 armed swordsmen right outside the door. Finally, he issued this chilling mandate. Once the council makes its decision, everyone has to obey it. Anyone who rebels against the final choice, they were to be executed.
Having set up this incredibly robust system, Umar gave his dying advice to whoever the future leader was going to be. It's essentially a comprehensive ethical framework for governance. He told them to always fear Allah, care for the early Muslim communities, protect non-Muslim citizens just as fiercely as Muslim ones, and importantly, never elevate their own family members over the people.
With those final words, Umar passed away. The caliph was buried, the doors were locked, and the 3-day deadline officially began. Those 6 men were sealed away to start their intense deliberations.
Now, inside that room, the politics played out pretty much immediately. The group organically split into 2 factions, 3 military generals and 3 civilian companions. Realizing just how heavy the situation was, the 3 military men actually voluntarily stepped down. They passed their voting power straight to the 3 civilians. So Zubayr gave his vote to Ali, Talha gave his to Uthman, and Sa'd bin Abi Waqqas gave his to al-Rahman bin Auf. Boom. Suddenly, the field of 6 is slashed right in half to 3.
But a 3-way tie? Still a recipe for total gridlock. Seeing this, al-Rahman bin Auf made a really monumental sacrifice. He officially removed himself from the race to become caliph. By doing that, he took on this incredibly heavy burden. He now held the sole tie-breaking power to choose the final leader from the remaining 2 guys.
So we're left with this massive contrast between the final 2 choices. It's a stark generational and temperamental divide. On one side, you have Uthman ibn Affan. He's around 70 years old, basically the wealthiest man in the empire, and famous everywhere for his immense generosity and his very soft, gentle nature. And on the other side? Ali bin Abi Talib. At just 45 years old, he's nearly a quarter-century younger. Known for strict discipline, and pretty much everyone expected that if he became caliph, he'd rule with the same rigid, uncompromising firmness that Umar had.
Abdurrahman literally held the fate of the empire in his hands, but he didn't make this decision in a vacuum. Over those 3 ticking days, he went out and conducted a widespread public opinion poll. And this is wild for the 7th century. He didn't just talk to the elite. He consulted military commanders, the women of Medina, the youth, even slaves and marginalized groups. He really wanted to know exactly who the people believed was most deserving of the leadership. And the feedback he got was super fascinating. Basically, the consensus was that both men were immensely qualified. But the public consultation showed a slight preference for Uthman. Why? Well, context is everything. The people had just lived through a decade of Umar's incredibly strict, disciplined rule. They were kind of craving a softer leadership style, and Uthman's reputation for gentle generosity made him the favorite among the common people.
But Abdurrahman did one last thing before making his final choice. He actually met with both Uthman and Ali privately and asked them the exact same question. If you were in my place, who would you choose? And remarkably, neither man chose himself. Uthman told Abdurrahman he'd choose Ali, and Ali, he said he'd choose Uthman. It's just a stunning display of mutual respect right in the middle of this massive power transition.
Okay, the strict 3-day deadline set by Omar has finally expired. It brings us to the final decision at the mosque. It's time for the reveal.
The scene in Medina was absolutely electric. After morning prayers, the entire Muslim population crowded into the Prophet's mosque. Historical accounts actually note that the crowd was so massive, Uthman himself couldn't even find a place to sit. He was stuck standing all the way at the very back. The whole room fell into this total pin-drop silence, just waiting for Abdurrahman to announce his decision.
So Abdurrahman stands before the crowd and initiates one final public test. He calls Ali forward first, holds his hand, and asks him a qualifying question. Will you follow Allah, His Messenger, and the specific path laid out by the previous caliphs, Abu Bakr and Omar? Ali gave a very honest, measured response. He said, I will do my best according to my strength. Then Abdurrahman calls Uthman forward, holds his hand, and asks him the exact same question. But Uthman's response was definitive and absolute. He said, I swear by Allah, I will do exactly that.
Following those distinctly different answers, the moment of truth was here. Abdurrahman looks to the sky, declares that he's passing on the heavy responsibility placed upon him, and officially announces Uthman as the 3rd caliph. And in this vital show of unity, Ali immediately steps forward to be the very first person to pledge his allegiance to Uthman. Following Ali's lead, the massive crowd just surged forward to accept their new caliph.
Stepping up to the pulpit, the 70-year-old caliph gives his first speech, urging the people to focus on the afterlife rather than worldly wealth. But right after that, he immediately puts his famed generosity to work. His very first official orders were to boost salaries across the entire empire, raising the pay for both the military and all government officers. Then, he dispatches official letters to all the regional governors, from Kufa and Basra all the way to Damascus and Alexandria.
I mean, just imagine being a governor in some far-flung province of this massive empire. You open this letter fully expecting it to be from Umar, only to be completely stunned. The letters told them that Umar had passed, but that the empire was going to continue running just as smoothly under the new commander of the faithful, Uthman ibn Affan. From city to city, regional leaders realized a brand new era had seamlessly begun without spilling a single drop of blood in civil war.
To wrap up this explainer, I want to lay you with a bit of a provocative thought. We just looked at how an ancient superpower transitioned its highest office through a 3-day ticking clock election that was specifically engineered to stop dynastic rule. By locking those 6 men in a room and forcing a consensus, did Omar essentially create an electoral blueprint that forever altered how we view the peaceful transfer of power? It's definitely a fascinating piece of history to chew on.